Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parvam, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Om Dhyanamoolam Guru Murti, Pujamulam Guru Padam, Mantramulam Guru Vakya, Mokshamulam Guru Kripa. Shivam friends, so today we will take up chapter 35, in which Prahlad is in praise of self-realization. Prahlad is continuing. Om is the proper form of the one devoid of all modifications. That Om is this all that is contained in this world. It is intelligence devoid of flesh, fat, blood, and bones. It abides in all things and is the enlightener of the sun and all other luminous bodies. It warms the fires and moistens the water. It gives sensation to the senses and enjoys all things in the manner of a king. It rests without sitting. It goes without walking. It is active in its inactivity. It acts all without coming in contact with anything. It is the past and gone, and also the present and even now. It is both the next moment and remote future also. It is all that is fit and proper, and likewise whatever is unfit and improper. Undaunted, it produces all productions and spreads the worlds over one another. It continues to turn the worlds around from the sphere of Brahma to the lower grounds of grass. Though unmoving and immutable, yet it is as fleeting and changeable as the flying winds. It is inert as the solid rock and more transparent than the subtle ether. It moves the minds of man like winds shaking the leaves of trees. It directs the organs of sense like a charioteer manages his horses. Consciousness sits as the lord of this bodily house, carried about like a chariot by the equestrians of the senses, sitting at its own ease as sole monarch. It enjoys the fruitions of the bodily actions. It is to be diligently sought after and meditated upon and praised at all times, because only this way can one have his salvation from the pains of his age and death and the evils of ignorance. It is easily to be found and as easy to be known as a friend. It dwells like the humble bee in the recess of everyone's lotus like heart. Uncalled and not invoked, it appears of itself from within the body. At a slight call, it appears manifest to view. Constant service and attendance on this all opulent Lord never make him proud or haughty, as they do any other rich master by his humble attendants. This Lord is as closely situated in everybody as fragrance and fluidity are inherent in waters, in flowers and sesame seeds, and as flowers is inseparably connected with liquid substances. Our lack of reason makes us ignorant of consciousness that is situated in ourselves. Our reasoning power serves to manifest it to our sight as our most intimate friend. As we come to know By our reasoning that this supreme Lord situated in us, we come to feel an indescribable delight like the sight of a beloved and loving friend. As this dearest friend appears to view his benign influence shedding full bliss about us, we come to see such glorious prospects as to immediately forget all our earthly enjoyments. All a person's chains are broken and fall off, and all his enemies are put to an end, whose mind is not perforated by his cravings, like houses dug by ingenious mice. When this one in all is seen in us, the whole world is seen in him. He being heard, everything is heard in him. He being felt, all things are felt in him. He being present, the whole world is present before us. He wakes over the sleeping world and destroys the darkness of the ignorant. He removes the dangers of the distressed and bestows his blessings upon the holy. He moves about as the living soul of all and rejoices as the animal soul in all objects of enjoyment. It is he who glows in all the visible objects in their various colors. He sees himself in himself. He is quietly situated in all things, like pungency resides in peppers, sweetness in sugar, and like. He is situated as intelligence and sensations in the inner and outward parts of living beings. He forms the essence and existence of all objects in the entire universe. He forms the emptiness of the sky and the velocity of the winds. He is the light of fiery bodies and the moisture of aqueous substances. He is the firmness of the earth and the warmth of fire. He is the coldness of the moon and the entity of everything in the world. He is blackness in inky substances and coldness in particles of snow. As fragrances resides in flowers, so he resides in all bodies. His essence fills all space, just as the essence of time fills all duration. His omnipotence is the fountain of all forces, just as his omnipresence supports everything else everywhere. As the Lord unfolds everything to light by the external organ of sight and the internal organ of thinking, so the great God enlightens God by his own light. I am that I am, without attributes in me. I am like the clean air, not stained by particles of flying dust. I am like lotus leaves, untouched by their supporting and surrounding waters. As a rolling stone gathers no moss, so there is nothing that touches or bears any relation to my airy mind. The pain and pleasure which affect the body cannot affect my form of the inner soul. The soul, like a gourd fruit, is not injured by showers of rains falling on the outer body, which resembles its hard crust. Consciousness, like lamp flame, is not to be held fast by a rope. So, this ego of mine, which transcends everything, is not to be tried down or not to be tied down by anything to the earth, nor does it bear any relation to the objects of sense or my mental desires or anything existing or not in existence in this world. Who has the power to grasp emptiness or continue the mind? You may cut the body but into thousands of pieces, but you cannot divide the invisible and indivisible empty spirit rising in me. A pot may be broken or bored or removed from its place, but there is no loss sustained by the air that it contains. In the same way, the body may be destroyed, but there is no damage done to the unconnected soul. The mind is as false a name as that of a demon Pishach. The destruction of the gross body doesn't injure the immaterial soul. What is the mind? but the perceptive power of my desires and gross pleasures and pains. I had such a perceiving mind before, but now I have found my rest in quiescence. I find the mind is another thing beside myself because it perceives and partakes of the enjoyments of life and is exposed to dangers that take the body. There is another one in me which beholds the actions of the other as a theatric act and witnesses the exposure of the body to peril as its last said catastrophe. The mind is the wicked spirit caught in ignorance, but the pure spirit has nothing to suffer. I feel neither the wish to continue worldly enjoyments nor a desire to forsake them altogether. Let what may come to pass on me, and whatever may happen to pass away from me. I have neither the expectation of pleasures nor an aversion to suffering pain. Let pleasure or pain take or forsake me as it may, without my being concerned or taking heed of either, because I know fluctuating desires are constantly rising and setting in the sphere of my mind. Let these desires depart from me, for I have nothing to do with them, nor have they any concern with me. Alas, how all this time ignorance, my greatest enemy, has misled me to these desires. It is my it is by fear of Vishnu and by virtue of my pure Vaishnava faith rising in me of itself that my ignorance is now wholly dispelled from me and the knowledge of the true one is revealed to me. My knowledge of truth has now driven away egoism from my mind, just as they drive a spirit from its hiding place in the hollow of a tree. I am now purified by admonition of divine knowledge. The tree of my body is now set free from egoism, which set like a demon yaksh in it. My body has become like a sacred tree, blooming with heavenly flowers and freed from the evils of ignorance, poverty, and vain wishes which previously invested it. Loaded with the treasure, loaded with treasure of sacred knowledge, I find myself sitting here as one supremely rich, knowing all that is to be known. I see sights that are invisible to others. Now, I have that in which nothing can be wanting and in which there is no want. It is by my good fortune that I am freed from all evils and the venomous serpents of worldly cares. My chill and frigid ignorance is melted down by the light of knowledge. The hot mirage of my desires is now quenched and cooled by quietude. I see the clear sky on all sides, without any mist or dust. I rest under the cooling shade of the tranquility of my soul. It is by glorification of God, my thanksgivings to Vishnu, my holy rites, and my divine knowledge and quietism that I have obtained by grace of my God, a spacious room and elevated position in spirituality. I have that God in my spirit. I have seen and known in him his spiritual form. He is beyond my own ego, and I remember him always in this manner. I remember Vishnu as the great spirit, the eternal Brahma in his nature, while my selfish ego is confined like a snake in the holes of my organic frame, which is wholly the land of death. It is entangled in the bushes of its picking desires, resembling prickly karanja fans amidst the tumults of raging passions and thousands other disturbances of this world. It is placed amidst the conflagration of disasters encircled by the flames of smart pain at all times. It is subject to continual ups and downs of fortune and repeated risings and fallings in its journey in this world. It has its repeated births and deaths owing to its interminable, interminable desires. Thus, I have always deceived by this great enemy, my own egoism. The animal soul is powerless at night, as if caught in the clutches of a demon in the forest. So, while I am in this state of meditation, I feel deprived of its power and action. By grace of Vishnu and light of my understanding is roused, I see my God by means of this light, and I lose sight of my demonic egoism. The sight of demonic egoism dwelling in the cavity of my mind disappears from my view in the same way as the shadow of darkness flies from the light of a lamp, and as the shade of night is dispersed by the daylight. After a lighted lamp is extinguished, you do not know where its flame has fled. In the same way, when we see God before us, we do know where our lordly egoism is hidden. My rich egoism flies at the approach of reason, just like a heavily loaded rover flies before the advance of daylight. Our false egoism vanishes like a demon at the rising of the true ego of God. My egoism being gone, I am set at ease like a tree freed from a poisonous snake, wrangling in its hollow cavity. When I'm awakened to my spiritual light, I'm at rest in my unconsciousness in this world. I have escaped from the land of my captor and gained my permanent ascendancy over others. I have my internal equanimity, and I have laid the mirage of my thirst after vain glory. I have bathed in the cold bathe of rainwater, and I am pacified like a rock after the cooling of its conflagration. I am cleansed of my egoism by my knowledge of the true meaning of the term. What is ignorance and what are our pains and afflictions? What are our evil desires and what are our diseases and dangers? All these, with the ideas of heaven and liberation, together with the hope of heaven and the fear of hell, are only false conceptions proceeding from our egoism or selfishness. As a picture is drawn on the canvas and not in empty air, so our thoughts depend upon our selfish principle and its want. As As clear linen receives the yellow color of saffron, so the pure soul receives the image of God. Egoism weakens the soul with the irritable passions of the heart, like the inborn color of a dirty cloth makes a good dye defective. Purity of the inner soul is like the clarity of the autumn sky. It is devoid of the cloudiness of egoism and the drizzling drops of desire. I bow to you I bow down to you, O my innermost soul, inmost that is a stream of bliss to me, with pure clear waters amidst and without the dirt of egoism about you. I hail you, O my soul, that is an ocean of joy to me, not infested by the sharks of sensual desires and undisturbed by the undersea fire of the latent mind. I prostrate myself before you, O my living soul, that is a mountain of delight to me, without the hovering clouds of the egoistic passions or the wild fires of gross desires and desires. I bow to you, O soul in me, that is the heavenly lake, Manas, Manas to me, with blooming lotuses of delight, and without the waves of cares and anxieties. I greet you, my internal spirit, floating in the shape of a swan on the lake of the mind of every individual and residing in the cavity of the lotus crown chakra, Brahmarandra, with your outstretched wings of consciousness and standing. All hail to you, O full and perfect Spirit, that is the undivided and immortal soul, which is in your several parts of the mind and senses, is like the full moon, containing all its digits in its entire self. Obeisance to the Son of my consciousness is always in its ascendancy and dispels the darkness of my heart. My consciousness pervades everywhere, yet it is invisible or dimly seen by us. I bow to my intellectual light, which is an oilless and wickless lamp of benign brightness that burns in full blaze within me. It is the enlightener of nature and quite still in its nature. Whenever my mind is heated by Kamdev's fire, I cool it by the coolness of my cold and detached intellect coolness, just as they temper red hot iron with cold hard hammer. I am gaining my victory over all things by killing my egoism by the great ego and by making my senses and mind destroy themselves. I bow to you, O all subduing faith that crushes our ignorant doubt by your wisdom, that dispels unrealities by your knowledge of the reality, and that removes our cravings by your contentness. I exist solely as the transparent spirit by killing my mind by the great mind, and by removing my egoism by the soul ego, and by driving the unrealities by the true reality. I place my body's reliance only upon the moving principle of my soul, without consciousness of my individual existence. My egoism or my mind and all its efforts and actions, at, at last I have obtained of its own accord, and by the infinite grace of the Lord of all, the highest blessing of cold heartedness and detachment in myself. By subsiding the demon of my ignorance and from disappearance of the demon of my egoism, I am now freed from the heat of my feverish passions. My false egoism has fled from the cage of my body by breaking its string of desires to which its feet were fast bound. I don't know where it has fled. I don't know where the bird of my egoism has flown from its nest in the tree of my body, after blowing away its thick ignorance as dust. Ah, where is my egoism fled? With its body smeared with the dust and dirt of worldliness, and battered by the rocks of its desires that can never be satisfied. It is bitten by the deadly serpents of fear and dangers, and pierced in its heart by repeated disappointments and despair. Oh, wonder to think what I had been all this time, when I was bound fast by my egoism in the strong chain of my personality. I think I am a newborn being today, and to have become high minded also by being removed from the thick cloud of egoism which had shrouded me all this time. I have seen and known and obtained this treasure of my soul as it is presented to my understanding by the verbal testimonies of the scriptures and by the light of inspiration in my hour of samadhi meditation. My mind is set at rest and released from the cares of the world like a fire that is extinguished. It is released from all other thoughts and desires and the error of egoism. I am now set free from my affections and passions and all delights of the world and also my craving after them. I have passed over the impassable ocean of dangers and difficulties and the intolerable evils of reincarnations by the disappearance of my internal darkness and the sight of the one great God in my consciousness. With this, chapter 35 comes to an end, and in the chapter 36, Prahlada's hymn to the soul. Prahlad continuing, I thank you, O Lord, and great Spirit, who is beyond all things, and is found in myself by my good fortune. Except you, O my Lord, I have no other friend in the three worlds who embraces and looks upon me when I pray to you. It is you who preserves and destroys all, and who gives all things to everybody. It is you who makes us move and work and praise your holy name. Now you are found and seen by me, and now you go away from me. You fill all beings in the world with your essence. You are present in you are present in all places, but where have you fled and gone from me? Great is the distance between us, even as the distance of the places of our birth. It is my good fortune, O friend, that has brought you near to me today and presented you to my sight. I hail you, O blissful one, who is my maker and preserver. I think that you are the stalk of this fruit of the world, and you are the eternal and pure soul of all. I thank the holder of the lotus and discus, and you also, who wears the crescent half moon on your forehead, great Shiva. I thank the Lord of gods, Indra and also Brahma, who is born of the lotus. Use of makes words makes a distinction between you and ourselves. Use of words makes a distinction between you and ourselves. But this is a false impression, like that between waves and their element water. You show yourself in the shapes of the endless varieties of beings. Existence and extinctions are your two states from all eternity. I thank you who is the creator and beholder of all and who manifests innumerable forms. I thank you who is the whole nature of yourself. I have undergone many tribulations in the long course of past lives, but your will, I became deprived of my strength and at last was burnt away. I have seen luminous worlds and observed many visible and invisible things, but you are not to be found in them, so I gain nothing. All things composed of earth, stone, and wood are formations of water. There is nothing here that is permanent. O God, beside yourself, you being obtained, there is nothing else to desire. I thank you, Lord, who is obtained, seen, and known by me this day, and who shall be preserved by me and never obliterated from my mind. Your bright form, interwoven by the rays of light, is visible to us by inverting our sights into the innermost recesses of our heart. As the feeling of heat and cold is perceived by touch, and as the fragrance of the flower is felt in the oil with which it is mixed, so I feel your presence by your coming in contact with my heart. As the sound of music enters into the heart through the ears and makes the heart strings thrill and the hairs of the body stand on end, so is your presence perceived in our hearts also. As the objects of taste are felt by the tip of the tongue, which conveys their taste to the mind, so your so is your presence felt by my heart when you touch it with your love. A man takes up a sweet scenting flower, perceptible only by the sense of smell, and decorate his outer body with it. How can one slide to look and lay hold of his inner soul, which shoots through every sense of his body? How can we in any way forget the Supreme Spirit which is well known to us by means of the teachings of the Vedas, Vedanta, Siddhanta, and Purana, and also by the logic of schools and the hymns of the Vedas? These things which are pleasant to the bodily senses, do not gladden my heart when it is filled by your translucent presence. By your effulgent light, the sun shines so brightly. By your benign luster, and the moon dispenses her cooling beams. You have made these bulky rocks and upheld the heavenly bodies. You have supported the stable earth and lifted the spacious firmament. Fortunately, you have become myself, and I have become one with yourself. I am identical with you, and you with me. There is no difference between us. I thank the Great Spirit that is expressed by tons of the words myself and yourself and mine and yours. I thank the infinite God who dwells in my mind without personal ego. I thank the formless Lord who dwells in my tranquil soul. O Lord, you dwell in my formless, tranquil, transparent, and conscious soul, just as you reside in your own spirit, which is unbounded by the limitations of time and space. By you, the mind has its action, the senses have their sensations, the body has all its powers, and the vital and respiration breathes have their inflations and deflations. The organs of the body are led by the rope of desire to their various actions. Being united with flesh, blood, and bones, the body's organs are driven like the wheels of a car by the charioteer of the mind. I am the consciousness of my body. I am not the body itself, or my egoism of it. Therefore, let it rise or fall. It is of no advantage or disadvantage to me. I was born at the same time as my ego. I was long afterwards that I had knowledge of my soul. Last of all, I had my unconsciousness in the manner of the world approaching its dissolution at the end. Long have I travelled in the lengthy journey of the world. I am weary and with fatigue, and now rest in quiet, like the cooling fire of the last doomsday conflagration. I thank the Lord, who is all, and yet without all and everything. I thank you, my soul, that likewise is me. I thank you about those scriptures and teachers that teaches the subjective ego and the objective you. I hail the all-witnessing powers of that providential spirit that has made these ample and endless provisions for others without touching or enjoying them itself. You are the spirit that dwells in all bodies in the form of the fragrance of flowers, like the breath of in bellows and oil rising in residing in sesame seeds. How wonderful is this magic scene of yours that you appear in everything and preserve and destroy it in the end without having any personality of your own. At times you make my soul rejoice by manifesting all things before it like a lighted lamp. You also make my soul joyful when it is extinguished like a lamp after its enjoyments of phenomena. This universal flame is situated in an atom of yourself, just like a big banyan tree is contained in the embryo of a grain of its fig. You are seen, O Lord, in a thousand forms that glide under our sight, like the various forms of elephants, horses, carts, and other things are seen in clouds passing in the sky. You are both the existence and absence of all things that are either present or lost to our view. Yet, you are quite apart from all worldly existences. You are aloof from all entities and non entities in the world. O my soul, forsake the pride and anger of your mind and all the foulness of slyness of your heart, because the high minded never fall into the faults and errors of common people. Think over and over upon the actions of your past life and the long series of your wicked acts. Then, with a sigh, blush, think upon what you have been before and cease to do such acts any more. The bustle of your life is past. Gone are your bad days when you were wrapped in the net of your tangled thoughts on all sides. Now you are a monarch in the city of your body. You have the desire of your mind presented before you. You are set beyond the reach of pleasure and pain, and you are as free as the air, which nobody can grasp. Now you have subdued the difficult to manage horses of your bodily organs. You have mastered the incapable of being subdued elephant of your mind. You have crushed your enemy of worldly enjoyment. So now rule as the sole sovereign over the empire of your body and mind. You are now become like the glorious sun shining within and without us day by day. You traverse the unlimited fields of air by your continued rising and setting at every place in our meditation of you. O Lord, you are ever asleep, and by your own power you rise also. Then you took on the luxuriant world as a lover looks on his beloved, as a lover looks on his beloved. These luxuries, like honey, are brought from great distances by the bees of the bodily organs. The spirit tastes the sweets by looking upon them through the windows of its eyes. The seat of the intellectual world in the head is always dark. There is a path in it made by the breathings of inspiration and expiration which leads the soul to the sight of Brahma. O Lord, you are the scent of your flower like body. You are the nectar juice of your moon like frame, the moisture of this bodily tree, and the coolness of its cold humors. You are the juice, milk, and butter that support the body. You being gone, the body is dried up and becomes fuel to feed the fire. You being gone, the body is dried up to become fuel to feed the fire. You are the flavor of fruits and the light of all luminous bodies. It is you who perceives and knows all things and gives light to the visual organs of sight. You are the vibration of the wind and the force of our elephantic mind. You are the acuteness of the flame of our intelligence. You give us the gift of speech, stop our breath, and make it breathe forth again on occasion. All these various series of worldly productions bear the same relation to, to you as the varieties of jewelry relate to the gold of which they are made. You are called by the words I, you, he, and the like. It is you yourself who calls yourself such as it pleases yourself. You are seen in the appearances of all the productions of nature, just as we see the forms of man, horses, and elephants in the clouds when they glide softly on the wings of the gentle winds. You invariably show yourself in all your creatures on earth, just as a blazing fire presents the figures of horses and elephants in its bright flames. You are the unbroken thread by which the orbs of the worlds are strung together like a chain of pearls. You are the field that grows the harvest of creation by the moisture of your intellect. Things that were non existent and unproduced before creation have come to light from their hidden state of reality by your agency. Just as the flavor of meat becomes evident by the process of cooking, the beauties of existences are imperceptible without the soul. Just as the graces of the beauty are not apparent to one devoid of his eyesight. All substances are nothing whatever without your inherence in them. Just as the reflection of the face in the mirror is to no purpose without the real face or figure of the person. Without you, the body is a lifeless mass, like a block of wood or a stone. The body is imperceptible without the soul, like the shadow of a tree without sunlight. The succession of pain and pleasure ceases to be felt by one who feels you within himself, just as the shades of darkness, the twinkling of stars, and the coldness of frost cease to exist in bright sunlight. It is by a glance of your eye that the feelings of pain and pleasure rise in the mind. Just as the rising sunbeam tinges the sky with its variegated colors, living beings perish in a moment at the deprivation of your presence. Just as a burning lamp is extinguished in darkness at the extinction of its light. The gloom of darkness is conspicuous with the lack of light, but coming in contact with with light, it vanishes from view. So the appearances of pain and pleasure present themselves before the mind during your absence from it, and vanish into nothing at the advance of your light. The temporary feelings of pleasure and pain can find no room in the fullness of the heavenly joy, just as a minute moment of time is of no account in the abyss of eternity. Thoughts of pleasure and pain are like the short lived fancies of a fairyland or castles in air. They appear by turns at your pleasure, but they disappear altogether as soon as your form is seen in the mind. By your light in our visual organs, things appear to sight at the moment of our waking. You reproduce them into being. It is also by your light poured into our minds that they are seen in our dreams as if they are all asleep in death. What good can we derive from these false and transient appearances in nature? No one can string together the seeming lotuses that are formed by the foaming forth of the waves. No substantial good can come to us from transitory mortal things. Just as nobody can string together the transient flashes of lightning into a necklace, should the rationalist take the false ideas of pain and pleasure for sober realities, then what distinction can there be between them and the irrational realist? Should you, like the nominalist, take everything which bears a name to be a real entity, then I will tell you no more than you are too fond to will to give fictitious names to imaginary things. But the soul is indivisible without desire or egoism. We know nothing whether it is a real substance or not, yet its agency is acknowledged on all hands in our bodily actions. All joys that are boundless in your spiritual body be yours, who is ever disposed to tranquility, who is beyond the knowledge of the Vedas, and who is yet the theme of all scriptures. All joy to you, who is both born and unborn with the body, who is decaying and without decay in your nature, and who is the unsubstantial substance of all qualities, and is known and unknown to everybody. I exult now and am calm again. I move and am still afterward. I am victorious and live to win my liberation by your grace. Therefore, I hail you, who is myself. When you are situated in me, my soul is free from all troubles and feelings and passions. It is placed in perfect rest. It is no more fear of danger or difficulty or of life or death, nor any cravings for prosperity when I am absorbed in everlasting bliss with you. With this, chapter 36 also comes to an end. We rest our today's reading session here itself. Shivoham friends, we will again meet for the reading of next chapter 37 onwards of Upasna Khand, Yoga Vasishtha Maharamayan. Shivoham friends.